Welcome everyone. It's time for part 2 of building some models. The brand new extra spicy and juicy, tender, succulent and moist Abyssal Dwarves. So, yesterday did these bad boys, some of the new grotesques, 3 of them to be precise. So these are pretty much finished in terms of building now. The only thing we're going to do today with those is a little bit of green stuffing of a small crevice under this guy's armpit, which actually when he's on the table isn't even visible, so it's going to be a crevice. That's the best place for it. And where's the other guy? Here he is. So there's the third one, and I started on the Hellfane yesterday, and you can see the box here as well. So last night I did a bit more cleaning up on the pieces. The only major things to report, major, I wouldn't really go that far, but there were some mould lines on these pipes, but very easy to smooth out. And this one. And then these two pieces, somebody in the chat yesterday was concerned that maybe the circles underneath wouldn't line up correctly. And you can see that when it does go together, all this bit underneath, so this is actually the bottom of the beast here, and this is the top. Normally when you see a big flat part like that, you think that's going to be the bottom, but this is actually the bottom here. So the fact that there's going to be possibly a little bit of a gap there, it'd be tempting not to even try and fill that in, because on the table you're going to be looking at it like that from above, if anything, so you're not really going to ever see under there. But I'll probably fill it in anyway, just because I'm a perfectionist like that. And then the head going on there. It's going to be very tasty. So we're going to stick that together momentarily. Got the live chat open, so if anyone wants to drop any comments or questions in there, then feel free. If you want any topics to be covered in discussion, if you want to get my take on any red hot sizzling issues that are out there, then feel free. So I think the first thing we'll do is stick together the two halves of this big, hideous, rocky body here. And then all the other parts will just go onto that later, like the legs. Pretty easy to figure out which one goes where, because they have these really specific kind of carved out parts here. This is what you get with computer sculpting, presumably. Everything should fit together almost perfectly. So, let's start off super glue. Where have you gone? Here's the super glue. Dicey guy is in the chat and says moist armpits. That's the kind of chat we want. Making sure to do everything kind of in view of the camera here as well. Okay, that's super glue applied. And the other half of the model. Put the lid back on the super glue, you don't want that sucker to dry up. The issue I always have with super glue is that it starts to form kind of a crust around the top. So I'm being careful this time to just remove that before it gets too bad. If it gets too big and crusty, trying to remove it ends up taking the whole top off the super glue. Or once it reaches a certain level of crust, it starts to like seep down inside the lid and glue the lid onto the bottle, which is very annoying. Right, so while it's drying, I'm going to make sure everything else actually fits, just to make sure I've not made any terrible mistakes. It's going to go on pretty smoothly. I'm going to make sure it's all nice and level here. And like I said, I'm not overly concerned about this underside matching up too much. So you're never going to see it, and I can easily green stuff into that crevice. So the top looks pretty good now. That's going to sit on there nicely. Point. Just going to keep holding it together for a while because it is quite a hefty piece. I see the guy says, "Oh my god, the miniatures are something else." Yes, they are. Mantic have really upped their game in the last couple of years when it comes to miniature quality, and the new resin stuff is vastly superior to anything they ever did in Restic. Even though I really like the models, quite a few of them that are in Restic, like the Trolls and the Fleabag Riders, and the Lesser Obsidian Golems, for example, all of those are in Restic and they're all nice models. The fact that they're Restic just makes them more annoying to deal with. It's not the greatest of materials to work with. So this resin is very, very nice. I've had no issues with it yet whatsoever. Very easy to smooth down. Okay, that piece is going to just sit there for a minute now. Somewhere now. Just out of shot there. So we're going to wait for that to dry, I think. We'll try and just build up from there. So in terms of other pieces, we've got this area where people are going to stand. This thing is going to go in there. Just trying to box here to see where everything's going to go. This bit, the front, kind of like that. I'm not going to try to apply that yet. Then we've got the 4 legs, of course, and pieces like this that are going to go front, various positions. I'm sure it'll be a lot easier once I actually built it up, rather than just trying to do sub-assemblies. I think some bits are going to be kind of interconnected. Because there's a little crevice there that something's going to slot into. Okay. Not concerned about there being a bit of excess on the front there. See, but it looks like one side is slightly further forward than the other. But I don't think that's going to make any difference whatsoever. Head is going to fit in there nicely, and then there's a bit of a crevice. Again, green stuff will easily fill that in. What I try to do sometimes, as long as you're not throwing something off too much, you're not tilting it too far to one side, if you've got the option, press it really firm against one side, and that way you're only having to green stuff on one side of it then, rather than kind of balancing it in the middle, so each side has a small gap. Try and make one side have absolutely zero gap and all the gap on one side, and that saves time. But sometimes, of course, that does lead to your model get skewed. So just be careful with that. So I'm really looking forward to painting this actually, because I'm going to do it the same way I've done my golems in terms of the actual beasts. Not exactly flesh, but rock. And I'm sure I'll paint it on camera as well, since we're in this lockdown. You need some kind of red hot content to keep you satisfied. So you'll see exactly how I paint them as well. Which is different to the way I paint most other things. And the actual, there's kind of throny bit of it, that's going to be mostly gold, but there is going to be some silver on there as well. And we'll see, because when you're doing any kind of colour scheme where you haven't had to paint anything that large in one solid colour, makes you rethink and ponder, do I throw in another colour here just to break things up a bit? So this might be somewhere where I put in more silver than I normally would in this army, because it is quite a hefty chunk. And there are some decoration bits here that are going to go on the part we've just stuck together. So while that is drying, I'll show you what else we'll be doing today. So we're going to do the grotesque champion as well. I've got his base in there, but I'm not going to do anything with that yet because it's going to be corked up real good. And all my Abyssal Dwarf models have their feet pinned, so I'll be drilling into their feet and then pinning them into the cork as well once the bases are done. I'll probably show you how I paint the bases as well on video at some point soon. Finish the assembly, because a lot of people do ask about that. Even though it's a very simple process, it looks more complicated than it actually is. So, you know what? Let's just start clipping out bits of this guy from the excess resin here while we're waiting for that to fully dry. Probably dry now, but Dwarven Darkness in here. Good morning from across the pond, apparently. Yeah, so even though most countries seem to be some form of lockdown, most of the countries that would typically interact with this channel anyway, then we do have, obviously, the internet to connect us to each other. Dicey guy, what colours are you considering using on them? If you're talking about the grotesques, then the colour scheme I've got in mind for those, if you've seen my Ancient Winged Half-Breed, the face on that is the colour I'm planning to do my grotesques. Kind of reddy, orangey, bit of brownish maybe. And it involves contrast paints and dry brushing. So hopefully you'll see that in action at some point soon. I paint these. Just trimming down these parts now. Always got to be careful with the big chunks on the bottom of the foot when there's possibly delicate ankle joints around. Very okay. So that's him trimmed down in pieces. So when we've stuck a few more bits onto this bad boy, we'll go back and start looking for mould lines on the champion. There are more parts of the Hellfane, by the way. There's all the dwarf crewmen, but I'm not going to worry about those just yet. They're going to be painted separately, of course. I'm not nuts. So, I think the first thing we're going to do is the legs, because then we're going to have some kind of stability and we can actually stand it up. So let's see where each leg fits in. That one seems to go nicely there. I'm going to dry fit them all first to make sure I've not made any terrible mistakes. Sometimes with the model you end up finding that one particular piece fits in more than one location. Okay, that one looks like it goes there. Which would mean that actually the front and back feet do look different as well, so that makes it a bit easier. See the different kind of toe formation. Got this one, which theoretically should be the back leg there, which should mean this one fits in right there. Okay, that's simple enough. So let's start sticking these bad boys in. What's everyone else working on out there in internet land at the moment? In these troubling times. I've noticed there's been kind of an uptake in Abyssal Dwarf models out there in the community. People have been posting a lot more of them lately, so I'm assuming more people are starting the army inspired by the new juicy stuff. Or, as I like to believe, entirely inspired by my red-hot Abyssal Dwarf battle report content. I know at least one person who's specifically said to me that they were inspired by my battle reports and that they've bought an entire Abyssal Dwarf army purely for that reason. Romantic, I'm not even claiming a commission for that. The back going in. Very nice fit, these legs. Slot into place very well. But as with any resin, sometimes you'll get a tiny little bit of, I don't know if you can see here, area. A little bit of a line that is visible, so I'm probably going to green stuff that. With any kind of resin, I usually go over anything that's slightly imperfect with stuff at the end. But it's probably not necessary. Dwarven Darkness, same here actually. I actually washed them, which I know you mentioned that you don't do. It depends which... Oh yeah, you're talking about washing resin models. Yeah, I've never really felt the need to do it because it's never really negatively affected my painting experience yet. I've just looked at it as a myth. It's never personally affected me. And also, I don't paint Forge World resin, and I've seen people have problems with that. I've actually witnessed it in person as well, where someone's had a resin Forge World model and the paint is just not stuck to it at all. But no other brand have I witnessed those kind of issues, even though they do recommend that you that you wash all the resin before painting it. At least most companies do. I've yet to feel the need to do. And while I'm putting the legs on, I'm going to continually kind of dry fit this piece as well, just to make sure I've not missed anything. It still goes on. See that it's actually a little bit wobbly there, which might be because something needs filing down there. Or if not, then it'll be another one for the green stuff later. From Darkness, I did it in case they use a release agent, yes. Yeah, that's usually what happens because there's some kind of mold release, seepage, residue on the model still. But if that's been the case with any models I've had, it has never affected ink work. And another leg. And they're going in pretty smooth, but there are some little gaps, as you'd expect with resin. Actually, into that crevice, because it's not got full contact, I'm going to just squirt a little bit of extra super glue into that crevice there. And then I'm going to send a tissue in after, dab up any excess. I can actually burn tissues doing it. I don't know whether. Argent Spears says, love this faction, I can't wait to get some myself. None of the local stores sell Kings. Well, that's very sad. Where are you? And the final leg. I heard that in game, even though I purchased one too, that the Hellfane isn't that great. Well, a lot of the lists that I've been looking at putting together don't feature a Hellfane. What I'm planning on doing, because I don't run lots of massed infantry in my lists, which is what you would associate with being a good combo for the Hellfane, its auras and such. Then I'm thinking if I'm going to use it in my current army setup, is just running it as a second Greater Obsidian Golem. It's on the same size base, and it's a similar kind of thing. A big hefty chunk of rock, so it should fit in there. And if in the future I end up with more of an infantry based list, I want to use something with a bit of meat in the middle of them, and I'm sure the Hellfane could fill that role. And also, what I tend to look at, my attitude towards miniatures, some people, they buy whatever's good in the rules at any given time, and then when the rules change, they sell that and buy something else. That's definitely not what I do. Because it takes me a long time to paint models and armies in general. I don't feel like I can justify doing that. I just tend to buy a bit of whatever I think looks cool, and if it doesn't work in the army, then I can just wait until the rules have changed and it becomes useful again in the future. If you look at my Goblin army, for example, picked the things I thought looked the coolest at the start, which were trolls and fleabags. Got quite a lot of those. It turned out trolls were actually good, the rules. But I've also got lots of other things that weren't necessarily in my lists very much. Like more beasts, and some of the goblin infantry didn't see that much. And currently, if I was making a goblin list, there are certain things that might not make it in the top of my collection. For example, people make a lot of mounted heroes, or during the previous edition they will have done, and putting your heroes on mounts often has a negative effect now, such as you can't take certain aura upgrades, that type of thing. So just buy whatever's cool. If you can't run it as anything that you want to use at that specific time, then just hold off, wait for one of the yearly updates, and maybe it'll get a new lease of life. Especially handy in armies where there are multiple entries for things on the same base size. So for example, Abyssal Dwarves for quite a while only had the one type of infantry available to buy. Some of them were taken out of stock and then obviously held off until the new Black Souls were released. So people were using the Immortal Guard as either Immortal Guard or Black Souls. It's the only time you can get kind of a multi-purpose unit like that. One example in my Goblins, I had 2 actual war trombones, and for the third one I thought, you know what, I don't want to buy 3 identical war trombones, that's not very interesting. So I got, it was a ball that looks like it's kind of blowing some wind out of its mouth, and I've put a goblin on the base with it, so that can either be used as Magua, who is on that size base, the same as a war trombone, or it can be used as a war trombone. So thinking that maybe in the future war trombones wouldn't have been as good as they were in previous edition, I might not want to run 3 of them anymore. There's something else I can use it as. I do the same with war machines as well, because I don't want my artillery to all look the same. So if whatever's the hot artillery, I don't just want to buy 3 of that. So for my Abyssal Dwarves, I've got a mortar and I've also got the Katsuchan rocket launcher, but I just run them both as heavy mortars at the moment. They're just pretty good. But in the future, if one of the other war machines becomes the better choice in the list, then I might run them as that instead. So you're picking up all kinds of sizzling hot tips on this broadcast. So, where do we purchase miniatures from? Let me know in the chat where you generally buy your stuff from. I've got quite a lot from Element Games over the years. Placed a lot of orders with them. It's quite close to me, and I've attended lots of events there, which means I end up with a lot of vouchers for Element Games. So that obviously drives me to placing orders with them. And usually their free postage threshold is about £80 as well. So if I get a £20 voucher, then that, of course, inspires me to then spend another £60 on top to get the free postage. I don't know if they've lowered their postage threshold during this crisis. I know Mantic have. And Mantic, actually, during this pandemic, actually had some really good deals on their website. The Mantic Isolation box, which I got, a good price, potentially, if there's going to be stuff in there that you need, interested in. I think I've got enough stuff in there to justify the price, even though I ended up with a lot of things I didn't need. But I did immediately sell a big pile of the Forge Fathers I got in there. And something else that Mantic had a really good price on. I think it was the Kings of War 3rd edition starter box, the Night Stalkers and the Northern Alliance, which of course you get the soft rulebook in there as well. And I'm not sure what the price is on that now, but it was a better price than most of the third-party retailers. If you haven't picked that up, that's worth a look. I was looking at it, of course, because I've got Night Stalkers in waiting, which you're going to be seeing the paint jobs on those at some point soon. I think I'm going to paint this guy first. It's Dread Fiend. I was looking forward to that. So, one of these legs doesn't feel especially solid just yet. So I'm going to, all the others seem, it's just one of these front ones is wobbling a bit, so I'm going to blob some more super glue in it and then dab off the excess. Super glue will kind of seep down into the recess, and then the stuff on the outside I'll just dab off with a tissue. Okay, so we've got this beastie, going to be standing like that. Going to keep him that way up for a while and let those legs fully dry. Dwarven Darkness, disturbing miniature, the Night Stalker you just shared. Yes, it is. It is it's a Hellboy frog monster boss legs with a giant's head. And I don't think I need to add anything else to it really. I think it's creepy enough as it is. And the reason I cut up that frog monster in the first place, because I wanted the hands and the arms used on my Shadow Hulk. So you can't even see it all in the camera shot here, it's so big. But you can see there that there's one of his arms is actually a dragon's head with arms coming out the side. Those are from the frog monster as well. And the head of the frog monster is under his armpit here. So this is going to be fun to paint. I'm going to be using a lot of contrast paints on the Night Stalkers. Hopefully, I haven't actually tried them yet. So I'm going to do the Dread Fiend first because that's small and much more simple. And if I make a mess of it, it's going to be much easier to remove the paint as well compared to that giant monstrosity there. Dwarven Darkness says, I know Wayland Games was offering 20% off on the Abyssal Dwarves. I think most of the retailers typically have a nice juicy discount when stuff is new. Where else have I made orders from? I think I might have made an order or two from Goblin Gaming as well. Some of these places aren't open at the moment during the pandemic though. I know Element definitely is. Mantic are still operating their warehouse. Argent Spear, they don't ship to the US. No one's shipping. Yeah, that must be annoying. Thankfully, I think as hobbyists, most of us have a huge backlog of models. So even if you can't get the spicy new stuff, in theory you should have something you can be working on during this time. Unless you're like me and you need the extra motivation to paint something, you need that end goal that it's going to go into your current army, or that it was a really exciting conversion that you've been doing. I need something like that to motivate me to finish a paint job. I can't just paint something knowing it's going to sit on a shelf for years, unlikely to get used. It just doesn't fill me with excitement. Okay, so let's start scraping down some of these pieces for the grotesque champion, shall we? So we've got the knife. Don't thank me, thank the knife. Get that reference. Okay, so we've got a bit of a mold line running down this guy's back. I don't know if you can really see it, but it's kind of going down his back all the way down to the back of his leg there. Probably the most obvious mold line that I've seen on one of the grotesques so far. But easy to remove, and these guys have smooth flesh, kind of, that you can just smooth down very easily afterwards. You're not running through a lot of texture with the mold line, which is always annoying. Argent Spear doesn't have anything to work on. What? Outrageous. Before this stuff arrived, I was almost tempted to try some board game miniatures that I've had for years. Got the entire Dungeon Saga set, which I haven't actually played yet. And I've also got Dragon Strike, the game. Lots of miniatures in it that I haven't painted. Kind of wanted to get around to those eventually. But I feel like I've got enough to work on right now that I don't have to resort to that at the moment. Once I finish these grotesques and the Night Stalkers, then we'll see. Has anyone ever played Dragon Strike, by the way? Storm Darkness says there's a mold line under it too, between the two legs. Yeah, there's a bit of a line beneath there. Of course, mold lines underneath. It's usually optional if you remove those because people are never going to see them. But any evidence of mold lines, even if nobody can see it. Companies tend to get cleverer over the years with where they position their mold lines, though. So a lot of the time you'll see a model and the mold line will be on a part, it'll be on a connection area, so you won't be able to see any of those surfaces together, which is ideal. The nightmare is, of course, when you have a mold line across somebody's eyeball or a beard or across their fingers. I've seen plenty of times. In this day and age, it's pretty inexcusable, I think. Yep, squeaky clean. Don't like mold lines at all. On some of my old miniatures that I painted 20 plus years ago, that I still have, there are just huge mold lines all over them. Didn't think about removing them back then. Some of my old dwarf army, bit mold line, a little bit of a line on the back of this leg here. Not as obvious as the other ones. For anyone who's interested, by the way, tonight it should be live streaming with Mr. Remington Steele playing Vermintide. So that should be exciting for everybody. I'll be playing the Witch Hunter, of course. Medical supplies here. Doing impressions of him constantly. We have got Vermintide 2 as well. So we'll go on to that. It's giving people some juicy viewing content. At some point I'm going to continue Space Hulk Deathwing as well, if anyone didn't see. Then first mission live. I don't expect that to get a lot of views. I do like PC games. I was thinking about starting another channel specifically just for streaming PC games. See, I do that aren't related to Wargaming. I haven't actually done it yet. It's something I think I can justify streaming any kind of wargaming based PC game on this channel. As long as it doesn't take over the channel completely. Especially during these times when you're not really going to get a lot of battle reports. So this champion's body is by far the longest cleanup of any one part so far, I think, in the entire game. But even then, it might be taking a while, but it's not difficult. None of the parts are difficult to reach. And the resin's nice and soft and easy to smooth out. I'm not going to complain too much about it. I think we're almost done with the body part though. I've got a second box of grotesques. I don't think they need to see me put those. It's just the same as the first one. Although, if I decide I'm going to do some reposing and converting on them, I don't want them all looking the same. I'm going to have at least 5 of them on the same base for wood. So I don't want them. Should be fairly easy to convert. If you're going to cut up resin, pretty easy because it's fairly soft. And when you're cutting, you just have to think, if I cut down a particular line and then reposition it, am I going to be able to easily resculpt that bit of the body there? Can I blend in with green stuff how it should look? You don't want to be going over cutting through any complicated areas that you sculpt. I did a lot of that with my trolls, my goblin army, because I had 4 hordes of those, so I've repositioned a lot of the arms. Sometimes that involves cutting off the connection points, just spinning them round, which then often leaves you with a bit of armpit in the wrong place, which you can then kind of sculpt a muscle over. Easier than it sounds. Okay, I think we're done with the body. I'm afraid of working with resin, there's so much that can go wrong if you're not careful, and then of course resin is a carcinogen. I definitely only work with resin with a mask. Yeah, if I was filing down this resin, I would definitely prefer to have a mask on. You don't want to be inhaling resin dust. Or if I was drilling it for any extended period of time. I'm not too worried though, the drilling little holes into the feet. My drilling area is on the other side of this very large room. I won't be hanging around there much, I don't think. But filing, I would definitely not like to do that with resin. So I prefer scraping the bits off with a knife. That's not going to create the same dust. Of course, always free to wear whatever kind of protective equipment you want. Glue fumes are another thing you've got to be careful with. Because what I often do when I'm applying sand on a base, I'll use PVA glue to stick it to the base. And then to seal it down, I like to use really, really thin super glue because it sets really hard. So the sand's not going to come off, even if it's dry brushed. So what I'll do then is just go and do that either outside or next to an open window. And then move away from the area after applying it because you're just pouring a lot of super glue over a small area. So there's going to be a lot of fumes from that. So I wouldn't do that sitting here at the not too much in terms of mould lines on this leg. A little bit on the back. I'd like the Grotesque Champion's stats. I also like the Half-Breed Champion's stats. So it's a debate which of those is better. Of course, the Half-Breed Champion, the advantage of being individual and being able to get through small crevices and charge off in whichever direction he wants. But the Grotesque Champion has the advantages of being a scoring unit, strength, and being able to multiply his attacks if he gets into a flank or a rear. I think there's something to be said for both. Although because I've got the model, I'm definitely going to be using some. I think the guy that won was it the Australian Clash of Kings? Had half-breed, had Abyssal Grotesque champions. He had lots of grotesques in general. I think he may have had a grotesque champion too. Lots of grotesques. Okay, leg done. Onto this rather pointy hand that looks like some kind of potted plant. I have a mould line on this one. Maybe a little bit of one, shaving off where the nectar left a bit behind. Yeah. 8 people watching right now, which isn't bad considering I'm not pre-announcing when these things are going to be. There was a line that I thought was a mold line. I'm not sure. This part looks pretty clean to me. Oh, we do have a join part though that needs snipping off. Let's see. Show you that. Let's see. Here. There's a little connection between the spike and chain there. Off. Dicey Guy says, what is the lore behind the grotesques? And I can actually tell you that. That is something I know. So, Abyssal Dwarves are pretty cruel masters. And they create these hideous creatures trying to basically build slaves to go into battle for them. That's easier than fighting itself. So they create these hideous mutants, and the grotesques are the ones that have kind of gone so wrong and hideously mutated that all they can really do is send them into battle, and then they'll die. They'll either die in battle, or they'll die later because they're just not stable beings in any way. They're just hideous. Not even nature's cruelest mistake, created by the Abyssal. Go into battle, get killed, or then later they just like collapse in a puddle and die under their own stress of their own existence. They're such hideously deformed monstrosities. And then the grotesque champions are the ones that just happen to live a bit longer. So they'll put extra spicy weapons on them, maybe give them a bit of armor. They've shown that they're particular in battle. But even then, I don't think they've got a particularly long lifespan. When you look at the stat line of a grotesque, you might be tempted to think, well, I know a lot of people have used dragon ogres for the models, and it's fine, they look quite suitable for the stat line, but when you hear the lore of the grotesques, think, okay, it really should be something more hideous and deformed. It depends how closely you follow the lore. I'm not usually that interested in the lore of games, but I did see one of the romantic videos explaining some of the bit of a mold line along the edge of his weapon. It's mostly flash. It's going to be easy to scrape. Being careful not to damage any of the spikes. So basically sending ugly babies to battle. That sounds about right, Dicey Guy. When I finish cleaning up this guy's pieces, we'll stick something else onto the Hellfane. Assemble this. Smoothing out the weapon here where there were connections. You can see a bit of a mold line on this side as well. So grotesques are the one thing that's been lacking from my Abyssal Dwarf list, even since the previous edition, because there weren't any models available yet, so I thought I'd wait and use only Mantic models. Ones are okay, I think we're done with this arm. Big hideous weapon on it. Is there going to be an option to get a grotesque in Vanguard? I don't know, because we do have the Lesser Obsidian Golem already in Vanguard. Don't know whether the grotesque will be available. Although if it is, then getting the grotesque champion would be a good choice, because then you could use it in both games if it's an option. But I don't know if it is. I don't play that much though. Abyssal Dwarves have been considered one of the weaker factions. I don't know if that's changed with their resources. I would imagine a bit stronger. The only tournament I've played with the Abyssal Dwarves in Vanguard, I think I was very fortunate not to finish last, because I didn't really know what I was doing. Okay, there's that guy cleaned up, put him to one side, and we'll get back to the Hellfane. Let's see if all the legs are pretty solid now. Yep, feels good to me. So he's got a little bit of wobble because that bit, this knuckle here, isn't actually touching the ground. But that's not going to be an issue because he's not going to fall. And when it's stuck down on the base, it's nice and flat. Nice guy, big elephant in the room. What is that on your finger? No, it's not a flesh wand. It's from a grievous finger injury caused by converting miniatures with a saw. Model slipped out of the vise and the saw went straight into my knuckle, which is actually healing nicely, but I'm covering it for this. So what shall we stick on next? I'm thinking this part. Maybe the head? Yeah, let's go for the head next, that's fun. And then when the head's on, then see where this piece goes, which is there. So let's super glue the head on. So yes, there was a huge slice, huge saw wound in my knuckle. Head is attached. Hold that in place for a while. Finger injuries are very common among hobbyists, I'm sure everyone knows that. Probably the most common type of injury. Solid. Because his nose pokes so far forwards, I'm actually tempted when I make his base up to put multiple layers of cork to make him quite tall. Because anything that he's going after in combat, his nose is just going to bash straight into the unit. So I think if I make him a bit taller, there's a chance if he's fighting something short, he'll just go over the top of it. So I have to think about that. Mantic, I think they've got these crazy ideas now. Because they've put their monsters on 75mm bases now instead of 50, they thought, you know what, we can make massive monsters now. But then they didn't think that maybe they were making them too big. It's the same thing that Games Workshop do. They make the base for something bigger, and then they get carried away and make the model bigger as well. Space Marines being a key example there. So let's stick the grotesque champion together. Yes, it's very hazardous doing any kind of finger work. Sharp implements. So looks like the third leg is just going to sit there nicely. And then this arm. That arm sits there. This arm. There. All these pieces fit in perfectly. So let's stick the leg on. I don't know who's watching this right now. Which PC games would you rather see live stream? Rather see Space Hulk Deathwing, Vermintide, Space Marine, Dawn of War, Dark Omen. Got Mark of Chaos. I've got Space Hulk, Dawn of War 2. Spicy Guy says non-laggy one. Well, I fixed the lag problems actually, if you're referring to the Vermintide stream that I did with Mr. Remington the other day. Fixed all those issues now. Should be no more video lag. Just needed to tweak some of the settings of streaming software. Right, so we now have 3 legs, as nature intended. This guy says, I would crush you in Blood Bowl 2. Well, you would, because I don't have Blood Bowl 2. I've got Blood Bowl 1 Chaos Edition. I don't think I'm very good at that. Played it much. Yeah, so I could do some Blood Bowl as well. Let's stick this guy's. Gone a bit over the top super glue there. Excess glue seeping out the edges. Just get the shoe on that. Okay, so this guy, even though he had the worst mold lines of all the grotesques, his pieces are actually going together really easily. And Regent Spear says Total War Warhammer or Space Hulk. Do you prefer Space Hulk, the simulation of the tabletop game, or Space Hulk Deathwing, which is a first-person shooter, which is what I've been playing so far on stream? Fetching another arm. Well, the first arm on this. Unless one of his legs is actually an arm, which I wouldn't rule out. Argent Spear says we don't talk about Dawn of War 3. That is correct, we do not. Reason I don't own Dawn of War 3. It's bad. Really loved Dawn of War 1 and Dawn of War 2 for different reasons. Different kind of game. But I really... Dawn of War 3 just went too far. Got too far away from its roots. Trying to be something it shouldn't have. What's going on? Snip off a little bit of excess that I missed before, stopping a clean slot into the Deathwing one. Yes, the tabletop simulator is. It's fun to play, but I can't imagine it'd be that fun to watch. Abyssal Deathwing, I enjoy playing that today. So I'll get more of that. Okay, we have a grotesque champion fully assembled there. Lovely. Well, not really lovely, it's grotesque after all. So we'll put him to one side. Running out of space around here. And back to the Hellfane. Wobbly Hellfane, because he's not stuck to its base. So, we want to put this piece on next, or this. It doesn't seem like those pieces interfere with each other. Yeah, I can see how all the pieces are going to. This piece is going to go back. Sides here. I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. So let's start with this front bit here. Applying the super glue. Oh, Argent Spear is a Primaris Space Marine. I don't own any of them. Something's not right. I need to snip a bit off this thing. actually fit into place properly. I don't think that was. Preferably while avoiding super glue. Let's try now. Nope, needs a little bit more. And now I've got super glue. Yeah. Is it going to plop down into place? Kind of. Maybe I could lose a bit more. Yeah, I think that's a good fit. Let's have a look at the box. Just got to make sure if something seems off center, just have a look at the artwork and see if it looks like it's supposed to be that way. I think it does. Because if you look here, you'll see that let's get something to tweeze. See here, there's less space on this side than there is on this side. So I was just checking to make sure this isn't supposed to be 100% central. And it doesn't look like it in the picture. It looks like this is correct. And it slots in nicely on both sides into the divided creases. So I think that's. There's going to be a bit of green stuff work required. And I'm also going to plop some extra super glue there. And then okay, so just going to sit there and dry off for a second. Let's look at the comments. So, be on junk, double digits. Yes, we've got 13 people viewing at the moment. Argent Spear. I'm also a fan of Chaos Dwarves, which is why I really want to do Abyssal Dwarves. Well, now is the perfect time to get into Abyssal Dwarves. As soon as you're available, as soon as you're able to order some of them. They're not currently selling them in your area because of the whole world crisis that's going on. You could also look at eBay as well, because a lot of people are going to be listing their miniatures right now. Some people are going to be struggling financially at the moment, so they're going to be trying to sell things that they've had lying around in boxes for a while. So it's worth a look at eBay to see if there are any Abyssal Dwarves there as well. And then you can pick up the new ones when they become available in your area. Now is a very good time to jump on board though. The Abyssal Dwarves are doing quite well in the game, and they're the newest range of models, so you can't really pick a better time to jump on board. It's not like with GW, whenever an army comes out, it's usually the strongest thing for a while, because that's a good way to make you buy it. But it's just coincided that Abyssal Dwarves are one of the stronger factions, I think, at the moment, while they've got new models. Undead are doing very well, also, tournament scene. When I say doing very well, I mean they were doing very well until all the tournaments were shut down. And some of the armies that were previously awful seem to be improved a lot as well. Thinking the likes of salamanders. Orcs seem to be different. So, serious question, why do resin and even plastics often have such bad gaps? Is it a defect in the mould? I think with resin, there's what they say sometimes is if something's taken out of the mould prematurely, then you'll get it kind of warped. It's not fully finished setting yet if they're trying to rush through. So sometimes you get gaps because of that. Sometimes it could just be a small defect that's not worth correcting because it's so minor. Sometimes older molds, I think they just degrade over time. But it probably is the mold. No interest in Call to Arms, says Sam. Is that the Universal Battle Tournament? If it is, then I'm not using Universal Battle until whoever runs it transfers my lifetime membership over to Universal Battle 2 from Universal Battle 1. Because I don't want to have to get another lifetime membership for the same service. Because they are supposed to be honouring Universal Battle 1 lifetime premium memberships with Universal Battle 2, but that hasn't been implemented on my account, despite multiple emails. E. Von Junk says, resin's detail is amazing, I really like Mantic's resins. Yep, they've definitely struck gold, I think, here with their resin Mantic. One of the main things people complained about with Mantic was the restic. Even though the models look nice when they're finished, getting them to that point was often a bit of a nightmare, making the pieces fit together. And the mould lines across the eyeballs, that's definitely a thing I've had with restic in the past. And the detail is just really clean and sharp on the resin. Sam says there's no lifetime membership anymore. What? Well, I need to look into that again and see what's up with Universal Battle 2. Are they just trying to cash in on the fact that people are left with no real-world opponents at the moment? I used to play Universal Battle 1 a lot for Warhammer Fantasy when I was first getting back into it. So that would have been about 2012, 13 kind of time. Played a lot on there. When I was figuring out the rules again, because I'd taken an extended break from Wargaming and came back and only had my Warhammer Dwarf army. Thought, I know, buy the rule book, start making notes on it to see how much the rules have changed since I last played. And then a few years later, suddenly my entire attic is filled with, I don't even know how many armies for an obscene number of different game systems. That's what happens when you get online and you start being exposed to all these different games, and you start meeting people and finding out about other games, you start attending events, seeing other products, different armies around. Even just for Kings of War, I've got multiple armies. And I've got armies for, if I had to guess, I'd say about 10 different game systems. Got either full armies or full factions for, most of which I don't play currently. Sam says there's been no change other than he had to rescale the servers when it suddenly surged in users. So the guy who runs Universal Battle is actually a human then? It's not just a robot, some kind of entity that doesn't respond to anything? That's the impression I got, since I never had any of my emails responded to. I would have expected at least my lifetime Universal Battle 1 membership to give me a year on Universal Battle 2 of the premium content. Dicey Guy blames me for his collections, which is fair enough because my channel does inspire people to go and spend money, I'm sure. Sam says, and you're suddenly an adult with disposable income. Yeah, that does happen to people. If they had miniatures as a child and then fell out of the hobby for a while, when they get back into it, they may find that they have a lot more money on their hands grown up. Not everyone does, of course. Okay, that piece is nicely set in place now, so let's go for this one next. So this piece is definitely going to require some green stuffing, I think, at the end, because it is a little bit on the wobbly side, but not too bad actually. Let's see if there's anything I can do. I might get the old knife and scrape down here a bit. Just to give it a little bit more flatness there. Don't know how effective this is going to be. But like I said, there's always going to be some gaps with resin, so I'm fully prepared for a green stuff experience at the end. I want to make sure it matches up as much as possible. It should be. You see, there's a couple of pipes on the back there. Here and here. So I don't think I'm going to be able to get both of them physically touching at the same time. As you can see, it's not. This bit isn't as flat as this. Argent Spear, I have disposable income and instead of saving it, I want to spend it. The essence of bad decisions, but I guess you can't take your money with you when you die, and I have no one to leave it to. So, well, there you go. You might as well spend it and stimulate the economy. Steve says, afternoon, what have I missed? Well, you've missed a bit of assembly and some red hot hobby tips, no doubt. Okay, I'm going to stick this on, and then when it's all dry, I'm just going to jam some green stuff under one side of it. Just making sure that it's sufficiently on each side. Let's see, there might be more I can do. I'm going to extend this little hole a bit here and see if that makes sense. It would be a job for some kind of sanding or filing, but I'm not really a fan of doing that with resin. It's going to create a lot of dust. Doesn't sound like a good time. The trick is just finding out which bits are preventing it moving fully into position, and then filing away at those. Or in this case, not filing, because I think that in place. For anyone that's just joined us, you missed the assembly of the Grotesque Champion. There he is in all his glory. So you can see that it's kind of at an angle, this piece. It's not very flat. So, do I just press on with it, or do I try and flatten it out further with more extreme measures? I think I'm just going to stick it down, rather than sanding off resin everywhere. I have actually just spotted something that I want to remove though. Look at this here. On this side there's a bit of a line that shouldn't be there. It's not exactly a mould line. Just a little bit of a sting issue. Just missed that when I was cleaning it up. It's only minor. And I think I'm ready to stick this piece on. Oh. Okay, being applied. Okay, I think it's going to be enough. Just making sure that while it's setting, it's not in any kind of funky position. Definitely going to be some green stuff application at the end. Flat. Hoping that's not. A lot of the surfaces I'll be green stuffing are quite smooth, so it shouldn't do. Not detail on the parts that are. One thing you can also do, you've got something like this, if you don't think the connection's strong enough, you can lock it in place and then drill through the two pieces together and then stick a pin in there, which will give it extra strength. So for a piece like this, where it's not perfectly touching on either side very well, it's not flat, then I would definitely consider doing that. I may well do that when the glue's dry, just to give it extra power. That's currently drying. Sure it's absolutely perfect before I put it down dry. And that's going to need some green stuff. We'll leave him to one side. And the rest of it is going to wait, the rest of the Hellfane here. So in the meantime, we're going to get one of the regular grotesques. We're going to green stuff his armpit, fill that gap there today. So I bought 18 inches of green stuff, and the green stuff has just knocked something over. What have I knocked over? Knocked over. Oh no. Knocked over Radical Trevor from Wasteman. He'll be fine. So I'm not going to need much green stuff for this. The one thing I'm most guilty of with green stuff is cutting off too much. So I'm just going to make a tiny amount. Don't need all for this job. And you can always make more. You can't unmake the green stuff. So we're going to mix the sides together, obviously. Argent Spear. For a company that isn't Games Workshop, these kits you're assembling are really simple and cool to build. As I said earlier, resin makes me a bit, can't deny the cool. Now, it's definitely a good time to jump on the Mantic wagon, I suggest. Their plastics are nice as well. And there's a lot less metal in their range these days, I think. Not that I mind working with metal too much. One of those things, if something metal annoys you, you'll kind of have the attitude, well, I'm never working with it again. And then a week later, you'll have more metal models. No one sticks to that when they swear off it. I think it's like alcohol that way. Had a bad experience with it, you claim you'll never do it again for a week. Okay, time and stuff and armpit. Put the green stuff in there, and then we're going to poke it into place. Don't want to use too much because out at the end. Most important thing is that it's smooth. The rest of the model is smooth. I was almost tempted to use milliput instead because you can actually wet the tool and smooth that down perfect with milliput. It actually affects it when it's not set. So you can get it like completely flat. But I think green stuff will suffice for this. You'll notice that on this Shadow Hulk that I made, the actual faces that were either sculpted or made with blue stuff, taking a cast of another model's face, those are in green stuff because it's nice and flexible. So when it's set, you can then still bend it a bit to stick it in round, but then I've used milliput to smooth it and blend it into the model because you can smooth that down with water and make it really flat at the edges. So both materials very, very handy if you're going to be doing big conversion jobs like this. Jerry says, never had an issue with working with metal, but then when I started there was only metal and it wasn't an issue. Yeah, there was a lot of metal back in the day. When I was starting, it was mostly starter boxes that were in plastic. There were these fancy new things like an Orc war bike in a box for £5 that was plastic. And then most of the characters you'd be getting, the special units, were going to be metal. Okay, smoothness there. Tear off another little piece now. Vallejo's plastic putty is a good halfway house for filling between milliput and green stuff. I haven't tried that yet, but maybe I'll have to. I did experiments with green stuff to find out how much blue tack I could mix into it without it making a difference to its usability. And depending what you're using it for, you can actually put a surprising amount of blue tack in it before it ruins it. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit of the green stuff that's not where I want it to be, so I'm going to just slice that out with a knife. Smoothing. Teensy bit more. Steve can't wait until I paint up that Shadow Hulk. It's going to be fun. But I'm going to do the Dread Fiend first. I want to try out the colour scheme on something. Yeah. Almost done with this. We're almost at optimum smoothosity. Margin spare. I love that Shadow Hulk. I wish GW would make their Gargants look. Yeah, the Mantic Giant is a very nice model, and it's very ripe for conversions, as you'll see when I'm finished with it. Okay, do I want to put any more green stuff on this guy? Still got some left. Maybe a little bit on the other armpit, actually. There's a teensy gap there. The standard Shadow Hulk model that does look very scary. But I think mine is scary. Mine is actually a rip-off of Martin from Mantic's Shadow Hulk, if you've seen that. With the tentacles for the head. So I've copied that, and then I've just like upped the weirdness levels by faces over it. Still gonna have, even though I only took off a tiny bit of green stuff, I'm still gonna have quite a bit of that left, because you only need a tiny amount sometimes to fill in gaps, and it's impossible to actually roll that little of it in your hands. And when you've got some left, you might as well just go around any tiny little gaps and fill those in while you're at it. Teensy gap totally underneath his arm, so there's zero chance anyone will ever see this. Base will prevent you looking at this, even if you turn him upside down. But I'm still going to do it. I'm going to get a different shaped tool now, just to make this completely smooth. Okay, I think I am satisfied with this guy now. He's going to one side. Let's see if ones need any green stuff while we're at it. This guy looks like maybe a little bit on this arm joint around here. Maybe I wouldn't normally put a piece of green stuff in there, but the fact that I've got it pre-rolled now, got to use it for something. That into place. And when it's fully in the crevice, I'm probably going to just shave the top off it with a knife. Since we've already filled in the gap. You can use liquid green stuff for this kind of job as well, I've heard, but I've never tried that product. Steve says, did you sort yourself out another frog monster? If not, might be able to go out as I have a spare and happy to trade. I have not sourced a second frog monster. Is your frog monster a frog monster boss? So I've been told that's the one I'm looking for rather than a regular frog monster. If it is a boss, which is the bigger one, then I'm sure I'll sort something out. You'll have to send me a message, tell me what you're looking for, arrange a trade. Because I would like to make a second Dreadfiend with my other giant head, so I can have twins. Even though it was that frog monster boss that caused this injury, still not shying away from another one. Okay, that's him sorted. And the final regular grotesque. Does he want any green stuff? Yeah, maybe a tiny bit. Arm joint. This is really nitpicky issue there. Just the line there. It's in there. That bit, and I'm thinking maybe a tiny bit on the back of the leg as well. Might actually be able to solve that tiny missile. Stuff. Maybe a teensy bit of stuff in there. Hopefully when I've done this piece, a quick look at the champion and see if anything is green stuffing on. And then whatever's left we'll just chuck into the Hellfane. Start. I'm going to be using quite a lot. It's a okay, that's him sorted. And Mr. Champion, have you got any crevices that need to see? He's pretty good at. Again, maybe just the tiniest bit. Anyone that wasn't here at the beginning, at 9:30 tonight there's going to be a live Vermintide stream. Mr. Remington Steele. Very exciting. Sure. Don't fall over yourselves with excitement. Log on though. It's not. You know what I'm thinking about doing? thinking about making a mystery Andy box and putting it on eBay with some of my random wargaming. Never going to get round to things that I wouldn't necessarily list on eBay individually, like if it's not a complete model or if it's an item that's not very sought after. Just making a big box of all those things, seeing what. Let me know if there would be any interest in a mystery box. There would definitely be an orange dice in it. I know mystery boxes on eBay are a thing that I buy for some reason. I suppose if you know what category of item is going to be in the isolation box. But if you don't know whether it's going to be book, DVD, a pair of shoes, or a toaster, I'm not so sure on a few of those. Okay, he's green stuffed. Let's have a look at Mr. Hellfane. So this bit is actually stuck now. So we can just shove this last bit of green stuff underneath one of the pipes. It is going to have to go in there eventually, so it'll just mean I use less green stuff later on. Steve has got a game of Kings of War 6mm over FaceTime tonight, so can't. Well, that's unfortunate, but I'm sure you can catch the recorded version. You are into Birmingham. Just splodging this green stuff under the pipe here. I'm going to have to use more on this area. Just use the last bit of that. Using it for anything else right now. So you can see around, there is a gap all the way around here. And the same, there's a slight gap on the other side. Because if I pressed it right the way down on one side, then this pipe would pop up too high and it would look silly. So I've kind of put it in the middle, so I'll be green stuffing both sides in this instance. Let's stick a couple more pieces on then, shall we? Before we wrap this one up for the day. Let's have these two little armor plates. Which side? Not sure if they're identical. Let's see. So that one there only fit here. This one. Yeah, I'm not sure either one of them fits as well on this side. So right. Of course, there are slightly different angles to the side plates because these are over the shoulder joints. So they're supposed to be at a different. I want to make sure they're flat. Supposed to. Oh, I see. We've got a little bit poking off the back of this, which is stopping it going down flat. Let's scrape that off. Is that better? Almost flat. This side's perfect. That side just sits on there. Side. This side is a little bit crevice near the shoulder. So I might have to do a bit of scraping. Let's get there with How about now? Okay, there we go. That is definitely flat now. And so those can be stuck on now. Yes, the Hellfane model is amazing. I would heartily recommend it. Even just from the pictures. Tell. It's maybe the best model that Mantic have got. Range. One stuck down, and the other side. There's number 2. I don't think they're supposed to be completely symmetrical, because obviously each leg is at a slightly different angle. And the actual beast itself isn't symmetrical, it's got different rocks pointing out at different angles. So these things, these flaps, would actually move different on each side. The angles of the same. It always throws you off when something isn't perfectly symmetrical. And when it's not, it's always best to go with your instinct and check, just to make absolutely sure that it's right. Often things are symmetrical. In this case, something looks wrong, double check. I'm sure we've all made some hilarious hobby blunders over the years. Sticking something on in the wrong direction, for instance. I did that with some drop zone commander ships. I had the wings facing the wrong way. But very fortunately, I was able to saw them off perfectly and then stick them on the correct way. And you can barely tell. The drop zone commander, was it plastic or resin? I think it's resin. And it was very easy to saw through. Okay, I think we're going to wrap this one up in a minute. We've made some steady progress on this guy. And we've got the grotesque champion done. So I think we may stop this one, and then possibly tomorrow I could do another one of these streams tomorrow afternoon and finish assembling this guy, and then I'll prime this dude in advance, and I can possibly start painting him. It'll be quite an experimental painting process because I've not used the purple contrast paints before. That's what I'm planning to use. See how that goes. May give that a try tomorrow, so that'll be some viewing entertainment for everybody. Any final comments or questions before I wrap this one up for the day? Been going almost 2 hours now. Okay, have one final look at the chat. Doesn't look like we've got any last minute comments. We've got 10 people viewing right now, so presumably people are just so engrossed in this red hot sizzling assembly action that they can't even reach their keyboards. Still need to get one of those scrolling things across the bottom of the screen that tells you the last person that donated was Billy from Texas, donated $50. And even if it's not real, it then inspires the next person to donate untold cash to the channel. People do it, so it must work. Okay, let's wrap this one up then. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description, the various social media shenanigans going on down there. Don't forget, tonight, in about 6 hours' time, I'm going to be live streaming Vermintide with Mr. Remington Steele, so that's going to be very exciting. Some top-notch rat-slaying action there. And don't forget to join my Facebook group if you're not in there already. There's Twitter and all that nonsense down there, and the various fundraising sources in the description as well. People want to give me their life savings. And with that, all that remains to be said is night out. Whatever you